Every Sunday he came in. Same booth, same silence, same faded field coat. No medals, no cap, just a trembling hand wrapped around black coffee and eyes that had seen too much. Most folks ignored him. Some whispered. A few even laughed. But when a young Navy SEAL walked through the door and caught sight of the tattoo half hidden beneath the old man's sleeve, everything stopped. He stood frozen, then snapped to attention, right there in the middle of the cafe. And in that instant, the ghost they all overlooked became a legend they'd never forget. What happened next changed the entire town. The bell over the door chimed once, and no one looked up. Not really. A few regulars glanced briefly, but when they saw it was just the old man again, they went back to their pancakes and small-town gossip. Henry Voss, thin as weathered pine and just as quiet, shuffled his way toward the far corner booth, the one next to the window, where the morning sun hit just right and the noise from the kitchen didn't quite reach. He moved slowly, deliberately, his cane tapping a dull rhythm against the tiled floor. The staff didn't greet him. Not out of rudeness. Just habit. He came in every Sunday. Never late, never early, always alone. He eased himself into the cracked vinyl booth with a soft grunt, set his cane down beside him, and adjusted the sleeve of his jacket. The same faded field coat he wore year-round, no matter the weather. A waitress walked by without stopping. She already knew his order. Black coffee, dry toast, no substitutions. That was it. He never asked for more. From behind the counter, you could see the way his hands trembled when he lifted the mug, both palms cupped around the ceramic like it might fall apart in his grasp. His eyes, a pale gray, drifted out the window as if searching for something he'd lost a long time ago, something the rest of us couldn't see. No medals on his chest. No baseball cap stitched with the name of a war or a ship. No bumper sticker on his truck outside. Nothing that said veteran out loud. Just the coat, the silence, and the way he sat like someone who'd been carrying weight for decades. If you didn't look too hard, he blended in with the booth itself. Like a piece of forgotten furniture no one had the heart to move. But people noticed, not kindly, not often, just enough to whisper, "Who is he? Must be homeless. Creeps me out a little." Still, Henry never looked their way. Never spoke. He didn't ask to be seen. He just came in, drank his coffee, ate his toast, and disappeared before the lunch crowd rolled in. A regular ghost. The laughter started as a low rumble. Harmless, at first. Just four men in their 30s, maybe early 40s, still wearing dirt under their fingernails and steel-toe boots dusted with sawdust from whatever project they'd wrapped up the day before. Contractors, probably. Weekend hunters. The kind of guys who ordered double bacon and didn't care what the cholesterol chart said. They had the center booth, the loudest one. Always did. And this morning, like most mornings, they were already on their second round of coffee and halfway through a story about a deer one of them almost shot. Then one of them spotted Henry. It wasn't hard. He was right there. Same booth, same spot by the window, quiet as ever. His jacket looked even older in the sunlight, the frayed cuffs and dulled brass zipper barely holding on. One of the men elbowed his buddy and tilted his head toward Henry without lowering his voice. Bet he bought that coat at Goodwill, trying to look like he's seen something. The others snickered, too loud for comfort. Another chimed in, smirking over his mug. "Yeah, old man wants attention. Probably tells people he was in Nam just to get a free coffee." The table broke into quiet laughter. Not belly deep, just sharp enough to cut through the hum of the cafe. The sound slipped across the floor like oil on water. A few heads turned. One of the waitresses paused mid-step. No one said anything. Anna stood behind the counter, hands still on the coffee pot. Her eyes flicked from the men to the booth by the window. She saw Henry, same as always, hands around the cup, eyes on the steam, lips pressed into a line so thin it was hard to tell if he was breathing through them at all. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He might have heard them, probably did, but he gave no sign of it. Just kept staring into that cup like it held a memory he wasn't ready to let go of. Anna felt something twist in her stomach. She'd been working Sundays for a year. Henry had never spoken more than a few words to her. Always polite, always exact. "Thank you, miss." "Black coffee." "Toast, dry." That was it. She didn't even know his name. Not then. But something about the way he didn't look up, how he just took it, like he'd taken worse before. It made the whole room feel colder than it should have been. The cafe door opened again, not from a new customer, but from the manager stepping out from behind the counter, smoothing down his vest like he was about to deliver a weather report. Rick, his name tag read, polite to a fault, always armed with that customer service smile, wide, rehearsed, just sharp enough to cut tension without actually resolving it. He didn't go to Henry's booth right away. He took his time, like he was giving everyone else a chance to overhear what was coming. Rick finally stopped beside Henry's table, bent slightly at the waist like he didn't want to be overheard, but made sure he was. "Sir," he said gently, "we've had a couple of comments this morning. Some customers are feeling a bit uncomfortable." Henry didn't look up, didn't ask who, didn't argue. Just gave the softest nod, slow and familiar, like someone who'd heard this line before, in places more cruel and more polished. He reached for his tray with one hand, his cane with the other, and rose with a groan that seemed to come from deeper than bone. The plate hadn't been touched. Toast sat cold and forgotten. The coffee was half full or maybe half empty. Hard to say. As he turned toward the door, the contractors at the center booth leaned back just enough to watch him limp by. "Guess thrift store guys got bad hearing, too," one muttered, not even bothering to lower his voice this time. Another snorted. "Maybe the cold will knock some sense into him." Henry didn't respond. His pace was steady, if unsteady. The kind of walk that made you wince just watching it. Every step a conversation between a worn knee, a sore hip, and a cane that knew all his secrets. The cafe door creaked as he pushed it open. For a moment, the cold morning slipped in like an uninvited guest, brisk, biting. The wind tugged at Henry's coat. Then the door swung shut behind him with a soft thud, sealing in the warmth and leaving him out in the chill. Nobody followed. Nobody stopped him. The booths resumed their chatter. The laughter softened but didn't disappear. Out on the patio, Henry found a corner table, brushed a few dead leaves off the seat, and slowly sat down. His hands trembled as he reached again for the lukewarm coffee. He took a sip, stared out at the street like it might give him something to hold on to. Inside, the hum of breakfast orders picked back up, and Rick returned behind the counter as if nothing had happened. And Henry, the man no one really saw, sat in silence. Outside, again. The wind hadn't let up. It rolled across the patio in sharp bursts, tugging at napkins and rattling the metal chairs against the concrete. Henry sat quietly at the far end, back against the wall, tray balanced on the uneven table. He didn't touch the toast, didn't sip the coffee, just sat there, staring past the sidewalk, past the parked trucks and the leafless trees, like he was watching something only he could see. When he reached to steady his cup again, the sleeve of his jacket rode up just an inch, enough to reveal a patch of skin weathered by time. Veins like soft blue roads, and just beneath it, something else. A tattoo. Simple, stark, faded like old ink pressed into parchment. A trident crossed over a pair of wings. The lines weren't sharp anymore. Decades had softened them, stretched them with age and skin. It was the kind of mark that most people wouldn't notice, or if they did, would dismiss as just another relic of youth. Maybe a mistake, maybe a memory. But it wasn't that kind of tattoo. From inside the cafe, Anna moved to clear a table near the window. Her hands were full. 2 mugs, a ketchup bottle, a crumpled napkin, but her eyes drifted automatically to the patio, to the figure outside. She saw him every week and had learned unconsciously to check on him, just to make sure he was still breathing, still upright. She didn't know why. Habit, maybe, or guilt. But this time something caught her eye. That tattoo. Her breath hitched slightly, only for a second. She couldn't say why it pulled at her. She just knew she'd seen it before. Somewhere. Not in real life, but maybe in a book or a photo. Maybe in one of her brother's old training manuals, the ones he left on the kitchen table whenever he came home from base. There was something about the trident, the wings. It wasn't decorative. It was earned. It had weight. She stared for a long moment, lips parted, something twisting low in her chest. Then someone called for a refill and the spell broke. She turned away. No one else inside had seen it. But Anna had. And something deep down told her this man was not who they thought he was. The bell above the door chimed again, sharp, clear, louder than it should have been. Conversations didn't stop, but they slowed. Forks paused mid-air, heads turned. He walked in without hesitation. Tall, clean-cut, early 30s, maybe younger. A black hoodie pulled snug over broad shoulders, jeans that fit like they were made for movement, boots with the kind of polish you don't find in department stores. He didn't wear a uniform, but his posture was one. Straight spine, focused eyes, chin level. You didn't need stripes or medals to know what he was. Military. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. He didn't speak, didn't smile. Just stood near the entrance, scanning. One look, that was all it took. The booth where Henry usually sat was empty. His eyes followed the space. Window, sunlight, reflection, and then past it. To the patio, to the corner table, to the man in the field jacket. The young man's gaze dropped lower, sharp and unblinking, until it landed on the old man's wrist, just barely visible through the glass. The ink, the tattoo, a trident over wings. His breath caught, not dramatically, just a slight pause in the chest, a shift in his stance. The air in the cafe changed. It didn't go quiet, not completely, but the undercurrent was different now, like the tide had turned, and everyone sensed it even if they couldn't name it. Anna noticed first. She was back at the counter, watching the man, then following his gaze out the window. Her heart stuttered when she realized where he was looking. At Henry, at the tattoo. The young man didn't move right away. He stood rooted, boots planted firm like he was bracing for something, like he was trying to absorb the moment before it passed. His jaw clenched, not in anger, in recognition, reverence. He wasn't looking at an old man anymore. He was looking at a name, a story, a legend wrapped in silence, and whatever he saw through that window stopped him cold. Because some things you don't learn in training. Some things you remember. The door didn't slam, but it closed with a firmness that made people look up. The young man had already moved, past the counter, past the booths, past the 4 contractors still chuckling into their eggs. He didn't glance at them, didn't glance at anyone. His focus was fixed, singular, unwavering. He walked straight to the glass door leading to the patio, opened it, and stepped into the cold. The wind greeted him, biting at his sleeves, but he didn't flinch. Henry didn't see him at first. He was still staring out toward the street, lost in the rhythm of passing cars and the vague hum of a life that had kept going without him. The coffee had gone cold in his hands. Then, slowly, he sensed it, that shift in the air, that presence. When he turned his head, the young man was already standing there. Feet shoulder-width apart, back straight, shoulders squared. And then, without a word, he snapped to attention. His right hand rose to his brow, fingers aligned with a crispness that hadn't dulled since buds. The kind of salute you didn't fake, the kind that traveled through generations. "Sir," he said, his voice rough with something deeper than nerves. "Are you Master Chief Henry Voss?" The question hung there, weighty, suspended in the wind between them. Henry blinked. His eyes narrowed, not in suspicion but in quiet disbelief. The kind of disbelief that builds over decades of being forgotten, of being passed over, of being told in 100 little ways that your story ended long ago. He looked up at the young man, tall, proud, holding his salute like it meant something. And for the first time in a very long time, Henry saw himself reflected in someone else's eyes. Not as an old man in a booth, but as who he had been. There was a pause, just long enough for the world to hush. Then Henry nodded once, slow and solemn. "Used to be," he said, voice gravel-thin but steady. The young man didn't lower his hand. He kept it there, holding a line between past and present, legacy and living proof. And for the first time that morning, Henry didn't feel alone. The cafe, once buzzing with easy chatter and clinking dishes, had grown impossibly still. The laughter from the center booth had died mid-breath. Forks hovered, half-raised, unsure whether to retreat or follow through. Phones lowered slowly, faces tilted towards the window where the young man now stood like a statue, saluting the old one in silence. Nobody said anything, not yet, but something was happening. You could feel it. Anna stood behind the counter, hands braced on the edge, heart knocking hard against her ribs. She watched the two figures on the patio, one still, one saluting, both frozen in a moment that felt like it had waited years to arrive. And then, like a puzzle piece snapping into place, she remembered. Her brother, Connor, infantry-turned-rescue swimmer, had told her once about a man during his first deployment. Not by name, but by reputation. "He trained the guys who trained us," he'd said, half in awe. Nobody knew his real name, just a call sign. The Ghost. Never left a footprint. Never lost a man. She hadn't thought about it in years. Not until now. Outside, Logan Beck finally lowered his salute. His voice, steady but full of something raw, carried through the glass like it had been waiting to be heard. "This man," he said, eyes still on Henry, "helped write the doctrine we still live by. He didn't just serve. He shaped what it means to come home alive." People shifted in their seats. Even the most cynical of the contractors turned slightly towards the window. Their earlier smirks vanished like smoke and wind. Logan's voice didn't rise, but it reached every corner of the room. They called him the Ghost, because no one ever saw him coming, he said. But everyone made it home. Henry didn't flinch, didn't smile, just looked down at his cup the same way he had every Sunday. But his hands, those old, trembled hands, were still now, steady, like something in him had clicked back into place. And inside the cafe, people didn't just see an old man anymore. They saw a name, a story, a reason someone was still alive. And for the first time, silence sounded a lot like respect. It started with the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. Sharp, sudden. One of the contractors stood up, the oldest of the group, broad shoulders, gray just starting to touch his temples. He didn't look at his buddies, didn't wait for them. He just pushed open the door and stepped outside. The others followed. Not because they were told, not because someone had asked, but because the weight of the moment wouldn't let them stay seated. They didn't walk in formation. They didn't speak. Just came out onto the patio one by one, heads down, boots scuffing on concrete, each of them somehow looking smaller than they had inside. Henry looked up, but only slightly. His eyes didn't narrow. They didn't burn. He just watched them, the way someone watches weather change, without judgment, just quiet understanding that things move in cycles. The first man approached, stopping 2 feet from the table. He didn't salute, didn't offer a speech, just held out a calloused hand and waited. Henry glanced at it, then slowly reached up and shook it. The gesture was brief, but it held something words couldn't carry. "Sorry, sir," one of them mumbled next. Barely audible. He didn't meet Henry's eyes. Another just nodded. A tight, humble gesture, like he knew he'd never get the moment right, but needed to show up anyway. Henry didn't say much. He never did. Just a small dip of the chin. Almost nothing. Almost invisible. But it was enough. They went back inside without fanfare, back to half-eaten plates and quiet booths, and the sharp sting of shame cooling on their necks. A few minutes later, the patio door creaked open again. Anna stepped out, a fresh plate in her hand. Eggs steaming, toast warm, coffee refilled. She didn't ask, didn't say a word. Just set it down in front of Henry, gently, like setting something on an altar. She gave him the faintest smile, then turned and walked away. No charge, no bill, just gratitude. And for the first time that morning, Henry picked up his fork. Logan didn't take the photo right away. He sat across from Henry for a long time first, both of them silent, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. The wind moved gently through the patio now, like it, too, had calmed down. The new plate of food sat half-eaten, steam still curling softly into the cold air. Henry held his coffee with both hands. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached again for the toast. The sleeve of his jacket had slipped just enough to show the tattoo. The trident, the wings, weathered and worn like the man it belonged to, but unmistakable. Logan looked at him, really looked, and something in his expression changed. Not pity, not sadness, something closer to reverence. Then, quietly, without asking, he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and snapped a single photo. Click. Henry didn't pose, didn't smile. He just sat there, hands on the mug, eyes somewhere far off. The camera caught what words never could. History, forgotten but still alive, held together by quiet resilience and a faded patch of ink. No filter, no edits, no attempt to dress it up. That night, from the edge of his motel bed, Logan posted it. He didn't tag anyone, didn't drop names, just let the image speak for itself. He typed 6 words. We almost forgot this man existed. Then he turned off the screen, set the phone down, and stared at the ceiling for a long while. By morning, the post had spread like a spark in dry grass. Thousands of shares, then tens of thousands. Veterans reposted it with comments like, "I know that tattoo," or, "That's him, that's the one they told us about." Some wrote just 2 words, "Respect always." News outlets started calling, messages poured in. People asked who the man was, how he'd been overlooked, where he lived. But Logan didn't reply. He didn't need to. The photo was enough. It said everything. And the world was finally listening. They came in waves. At first, it was just a handful. Letters dropped off at the cafe or slid under the door of the auto shop Henry used to frequent. A thank you note here. A folded photo there. A drawing in crayon, stick figures and crooked stars. But then the mailbox filled. The inbox flooded. The cafe phone rang so often the line had to be unplugged. Some letters came from soldiers. Some from the children of men who'd never made it back, but said their fathers told stories of someone who always did the impossible. A man with a quiet voice and a tattoo that meant survival. You saved my dad in Fallujah. My uncle told us about the extraction in Kandahar. He said a man named Voss carried him half a mile under fire. He taught us never to leave a man behind. Anna began pinning the notes to a corkboard just inside the cafe's front door. She had to expand it twice. One Saturday morning, a busload of ROTC cadets came through town. They didn't speak much, just came in, ordered black coffee, left tips far too large for what they ate. One of them folded a napkin and wrote in block letters, "Thank you for the standard we're supposed to live up to." The city council held a vote. It wasn't even close. Within a week, the old park bench outside the cafe, the one Henry had sat at quietly for years, had been replaced with a new one, clean and sturdy, bolted into place under the awning. A bronze plaque was mounted into the backrest. It read, "Reserved in honor of Master Chief Henry Voss, who never asked to be remembered, but will never be forgotten." They didn't hold a ceremony. Henry wouldn't have wanted that. They just installed it on a Tuesday morning and left a single folded flag on the seat. And every Sunday after, someone came. Never the same person twice. A teenager in a hoodie, a woman in a worn army jacket, an old Marine who sat with both hands clasped in prayer. No one said much. They just sat, facing the street, listening to the wind, and keeping company with a legacy that spoke louder in silence than most ever do in words.